What's up, guys? It's Eric and Marcus from Rare Candy, and today we're actually doing kind of a special video. I'm sure you've noticed somewhere online, but it's the Pokemon's 20th anniversary. They've been doing a bunch of promotions for it. We just got some new games announced, and we wanted to do something kind of special too to help celebrate, you know, Pokemon and why it's the best
20th
and why it's so
birthday,
cool.
and why Ash is now 30 years old.
Yeah, but still 8 somehow.
Yeah.
But yeah, we wanted to do something kind of cool too. So we decided, since we are like a channel geared more towards competitive players, we decided to go over some of our favorite competitive first generation Pokemon cards. So, and for this, we tried not to do any repeats. Like we try to limit one card per Pokemon. And this list might not even necessarily be the best, but I think these are just some of our favorites that we've had over the years.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so we're excited. Let us know too if we missed anything as well.
Top 20.
First off, we're gonna kick it off with our boy Hitmonchan here, all the way from base set.
So it's a big basic right there, man.
Yeah, no, literally, this was big basics back in the day. We're so that probably seems absurd now that we have like big 180 hit points and even 250 hit point basics with Wailord.
Yeah.
So 70 kind of seems a little weak.
Yeah.
But back then, this really wasn't. 20 for one energy was crazy. It's like you can do 20 for one energy.
Just one?
Just one, man.
And I'm doing 20 damage.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, oh, and if you really wanted to get crazy, you could play plus power
Yeah.
to do 30 for one.
Get a little bit more in there.
But but yeah, Hitmonchan was a super quick attacker back then. And so, like I said, you had things like plus power to amplify your damage. And the format back then was just super aggressive. Gust of Wind, which was basically the pre-errata Pokemon catcher. You could easily just Gust of Wind up, low HP basics and start wailing on them early on in the game. Since I believe you could attack first turn back then as well.
Yeah.
So, very aggressive card. And also, even though energy removal was very prevalent back then, again, jab just for one energy was fine. Energy removal didn't hurt you probably as much as maybe another deck would have. But basically, we saw Hitmonchan get played with a variety of different big basics. The most popular two were Scyther and Electabuzz. And then later, a promo Mewtwo came out that also saw some play. I think it saw some play as a result of Hitmonchan being so popular,
Hmm.
if I remember right. I could be completely wrong here, but if I remember right, I think that's why. But yeah, Hitmonchan was super good back in the day, and I don't think we've had a good one since. But but yeah, he was really really cool back in the base set
Yeah.
days. Next up, we have Wigglytuff, all the way back from the second set, Jungle, and Wigglytuff, 80 hit points. And again, looking at this card, you wouldn't think much of it. Um, Even its attack doesn't seem that good. Do the wave 10 plus 10 more for each of your bench Pokemon. You're doing 60 hit points for 3 energy. Like that seems
Yeah.
absurd by today's
I
standards.
looked at this card a little bit earlier and I was like, 3 energy and I can do 60 damage. uh,
Yeah.
Doesn't seem the best right now, but it's not too bad for back then. I mean, Wigglytuff had 80 HP itself, so
Yeah, and it had a couple things going for it. Unfortunately, it was weak to Hitmonchan, so that was, I think, its biggest, I guess, con against it. But really, when you think about it, 60 hit points. What does that mean as far as the hit points back then? With the plus power, you knock out all of the big basics back then. Electabuzz, Scyther, Hitmonchan. I'm pretty sure they all had 70 hit points. Even the Mewtwo promo that came out, I believe, also had 70 hit points. And it definitely knocked out pretty much every unevolved Pokemon. Just to put in perspective, I think like Blastoise back in the day and all the stage twos only had around 100 hit points,
yeah,
maybe 120 max. So Wigglytuff was definitely two-shotting everything if it wasn't going to one-shot it. So again, it seems like a heavy attack cost, but it got one-hit knockouts. So
yeah,
the 3 energy for a one-hit knockout wasn't that bad
Hmm.
back then. So yeah, definitely it was a really dominant card back in the day in the competitive scene, and that's kind of what made it good. So next up, we're starting to get into a more modern era of cards. This here we have Pidgeot from Fire Red Leaf Green, back in 2004, and I mean, even by today's standards, if you just read its Pokepower, it's pretty obviously good.
Yeah.
So quick search. Once during your turn before you attack, you can search your deck for any card. Any card. No discarding 2 cards like computer search or anything like that. Just any card put into your hand. You can only use one of these Pokepowers per turn though.
Hmm.
That's the catch to it. But still, any card out of your deck every turn, that's so strong.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I want to cry.
Yeah, and this is back when rare candy could be played immediately. You didn't have to wait a turn to evolve. So you could potentially first turn, throw down rare candy into Pidgeot, just start searching your deck for any card and getting set up. So this is a card that got put into a lot of different decks just as a consistency booster.
Hmm.
And it's pretty obvious why. Next up we have Delta Dragonite. And if you didn't play during this era of cards, you're probably thinking, why in the world is Dragonite Metal and Lightning type? But but yeah, this was a mechanic back in the day where Delta Pokemon, they still had all of their normal weaknesses and resistances, but their types were different because I think they were like experimented on in like the fiction of the card game.
Hmm.
I think that was the premise for it.
Right.
But Delta Charge, if you played in the past several formats, this ability should look really familiar to you. Once during your turn before you attack, you may attach a lightning energy from your discard to one of your bench Pokemon. So where have we seen that before?
Electric, Bronzong. I mean,
Yeah.
seems pretty good. I loved this ability. Back in the day when Electric had come out and everything, oh man, I was all about that card.
So yeah, this was super good, and you played it with a Meta Knight, or I'm sorry, a Metagross back at the time, who had an attack kind of similar to Rayquaza EX from newer formats that discarded energy to do more damage. So that was kind of the synergy between the two attacks, or between the two Pokemon. Dragonite accelerated discarded energy, and Metagross discarded the energy. And also, this is back in a format where Delta Pokemon specifically had an entire engine to help them set up. And like I said, you could rare candy on the first turn of the game, or as soon as you play down the Pokemon back then. So super strong card. This type of ability is still good even today. So
Yeah.
yeah, Dragonite was awesome. This one's gonna throw y'all for a curveball. If y'all didn't play in this format, you're gonna be like, why is a Magneton on this list? Because it's only got 70 hit points, and its attack, even back then, is pretty bad
Yeah.
for a metal, which by the way was a special energy at the time, not a basic. So you could only run 4 metals in your deck unless you played some weird special energies. If the defending Pokemon was an EX, it was 30 plus 20 more damage. That's bad, even for that format.
Yeah.
But yeah, Marcus was kind of stumped reading this too.
Yeah, I saw this. I was like, I got through the attack text and I was like, okay, so why is this on our list? But then you read what's below it. You may attach this as an energy card to one of your Pokemon that already has an energy card attached to it. So you could attach this Pokemon as an energy, and it was a double rainbow.
Yeah, so that's kind of what made it good. A bunch of different decks played these Holland's Pokemon. There was a couple other ones like Cast Form, Electrode, Magnemite, I believe, and Voltorb. I think were the Holland's energy attaching Pokemon. But so we saw this especially, I remember, in LBS, which was Lugia EX, Blastoise EX, and Steelix EX. Lugia had a really weird attack cost back in the day, and as did all these Delta Pokemon. So I think that was the main reason this was printed. But
Right.
Lugia had this really weird attack cost where it was fire, lightning, and water. Blastoise EX could accelerate water energy. So you played Blastoise to get all of the energy you needed on Lugia, and then you basically attached for turn a Holland's Pokemon like this to provide the extra two energies that Blastoise doesn't.
Right.
So that was kind of like the main purpose for these types of cards. Really, really weird mechanic.
Oh man.
we, yeah, we haven't had anything like this in a long time.
I kind of wish I played back then because this is crazy.
Yeah.
When I read that, I was just like, oh gosh.
Yeah, and it's also kind of cool too because when you think about it, special energies don't really have a lot of ways to be searched out. Like obviously, Pidgeot was in the format back then, but as a Pokemon, you can more easily search out this type of energy. So they had stuff like Celio's network back then, for example, which could search your deck for any Pokemon, kind of like Trevor from the current format, which doesn't see any play. But so my point is there was a lot of other ways to get this out of your deck when you needed it. So I think that's another thing that made these types of energy good.
Imagine if in the current format you could level ball for a
Oh,
double
God.
rainbow.
Yeah. That would be pretty sick. But yeah, so this was a cool mechanic, and I definitely wanted to include this, if for no other reason, just to kind of show people some of the interesting mechanics we had all this time ago. And next up, we have Mew EX, and this should be very familiar even for newer players of the game. So it's a low HP EX. Even back then, 90 hit points wasn't the greatest, but it was at least, I think, decently acceptable for its time. But the big reason you play this was for versatile. Mew EX can use the attacks of all Pokemon in play as its own. So that's just like the Mew EX we had from Dragons Exalted that got reprinted in Legendary Treasures. So anybody that's more accustomed to newer formats that knows how good Mew is, this should strike you as no surprise that this one was good too. The main deck I think that got the most popularity from this card was Mewtrick. So you played this with Manectric EX, and Manectric was basically Zebstrika from Next Destinies, if any of you are familiar with that card, where for a lightning and colorless, it did, I believe, 40 and locked your opponent's items, and then its other attack was like a sniping attack. So Mew EX was used in that deck, and which saw a lot of success. And that's kind of, I think, the main way this card was well known for. But yeah, so like I said, even if you're from newer formats, it's clear why this type of ability is really good. Okay, so next up we're entering the Diamond and Pearl era of cards. And the first one we're going to look at is Beedrill from Great Encounters. And this is actually a card, even if you look at it by today's standards, it's actually pretty good. And this is a format where they didn't have these big 180 hit point basic EXs. I believe EXs were still in format at this point. I don't think they had been rotated, but I don't think they were also as beefy as the ones we currently have.
Right.
So Beedrill, band attack, does 30 times the number of Beedrill you have in play. So 120 for one energy is really good.
That's insane.
Yeah, like even in today's format, that's good.
I was going. Didn't they have? Did you say they had broken time space in this format? Or
Yeah, I forget if it came out in Great Encounters with this or not. But yeah, they had it in this format though at some point.
So for one energy, I mean, assuming you're playing a consistent enough list, I didn't play back then, so I don't know if this was possible. But you could essentially do like on your first turn of the game 120 damage just for one energy. That's insane.
Yeah, well, the first turn rules I know have changed. I know, like at some point, I think there was like a rule where you couldn't play trainer cards if you went first or something. Or
so you couldn't quite get there, but still even turns.
Yeah, I don't remember at what point the first turn rules were because they've changed with like every major card block.
Yeah,
if I remember right. So, but yeah, I mean, even still, it's super good. You can get set up super quick with this type of deck, and yeah, 120 for one is
for one.
It's good. Good card is good.
Yeah.
And next, we're looking at the first of several cards from Stormfront, which was debatably one of the best Diamond and Pearl slash platinum card sets that had come out. So first up, we're going to look at Gyarados. 130 hit points on a stage 1. That is actually really good. I mean, even by taste standards, that's good.
Yeah, definitely.
But even back then, that was super super good. But yeah, it has 3 attacks, but we're really only looking at one here. It's Tail Revenge. They used to have Pokemon that could attack for 0 energy, and Gyarados is one of them. And he did 30 damage times the number of Magikarp in your discard pile. So obviously that means you can have up to 3 Magikarp in your discard. So you can do 90 for 0 energy. Again, that's just
insane.
Yeah, that's super good. Like even by taste standards, 90 for 1 is good.
Yeah.
But 90 for 0 on a non-EX type of thing like this, it's pretty good. But yeah, back then they played, I think, things like Regice and also later down the road Junk Arm, just to help discard some of your Magikarp, for example. And yeah, basically that's the idea. Get Magikarp in the discard and swing for lots of damage with Gyarados.
Seems good.
Okay. Next up from Stormfront, we have Gengar. This is actually a card that's really cool. I'd actually quit playing around the time that this set came out. So I'm unfortunately never got to play it in tournaments or anything. But really cool card. Has the Pokepower Feigning spell, basically the same as the one from Chandelure from Phantom Forces that we currently have. But once during your opponent's turn, if Gengar gets knocked out by damage of an attack, you flip a coin. If heads, the defending Pokemon is knocked out. So super strong Pokepower to keep just right off the bat. Super strong.
Yeah.
Shadow Room for one Psychic. Put 3 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. If they have any Pokepowers, you put 6 damage counters instead. So 6 damage counters for 1 Psychic is pretty good. But Poltergeist, I think, is the real is the main attack that we want to look at here.
Yeah.
So for a Psychic and Colorless, you look at your opponent's hand and it does 30 damage times the number of Trainer, Supporter, and Stadium cards. Item cards were called Trainer cards back then, just in case you're confused by the wording of the card. But yeah, so ideally, I mean, Gengar was played in a couple different decks, but the last, I think, big deck that came out with it was Gengar and Vileplume from Undaunted, which locked your opponent's trainer cards. So you would use this attack in conjunction with Vileplume to do large amounts of damage. So really cool card. Like I said, I'm kind of bummed I never got to actually play with it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Seems great for 2 energy too.
Free Retreat's always good too.
Oh, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, man.
That's great.
And next up from Stormfront, my boy Machamp. Now this is a card I would kill to come back in today's format.
Oh man.
3 attacks. I don't really care about the last 2. We're looking at Takeout. For 1 fighting, it does 40 damage. And basically, if your defending Pokemon isn't an evolved Pokemon, it is knocked out.
Knocked out.
Just straight up. Get it out of here, right in the discard pile.
Oh man, if this was in format today.
Yeah. You gotta think, this is in a format with broken time space and also first turn rare candy. So it's pretty easy to get this out. But yeah, if I remember right, I'm not sure if Machamp was actually that heavily played when it first came out. Right. And correct me if I'm wrong on this in the comments, guys. I think it really started to see a lot more play there once all of the SP Pokemon came out. So all of like the gym leader Pokemon from the Platinum sets, they were all printed as basics, and they were hugely popular. There was like Dialga G, Luxray, there's an Infernape that was popular, Garchomp. There's a lot of really good SP Pokemon, and Machamp just kind of took them out, as the attack would imply.
Yeah. This is insane. Like, I keep like thinking about if this was in the current format where stuff's got like 180 HP and you're just losing 2 prizes to a 1 energy attack.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, I'm biased, but anytime we get cards that discourage big basic attackers, I'm completely for it. So anything that lets me play rare candy, again, we're kind of biased here
Yeah.
because of the name rare candy and all, but anything that lets us play setup decks,
Right.
I completely endorse. So I back Machamp. Again, kind of bummed I didn't get to crush people's dreams with this
Oh
back in the
gosh.
day. But really good card from what I understand.
Yeah.
So that's it for all of the Diamond and Pearl era cards. Now we're getting to the Heart Gold era. So first up we have Ninetails. So yeah, Pokepower Roast Reveal. Once during your turn, you can discard a fire energy from your hand. If you do, draw 3 cards. And that's really the only reason we're looking at this card.
Yeah. Really good draw support. Stage 1, so it's not that hard to get out.
Yeah, for sure. But the 2 big cards I think saw the most benefit from this was mainly Typhlosion Prime. That was the big one because Typhlosion was kind of like Dragonite, Delta, and Electric and all these Pokemon that accelerated energy out of the discard. So Ninetales, you would use that to use Roast Reveal to put fire energy in the discard, and you use Typhlosion Prime to help accelerate that back onto the field.
Definitely seems great.
Yeah. Some Emor decks played it as well. Like, I think some Emor decks played a 1-1 line of this.
Yeah.
Just because Emor accelerated from the hand, you weren't trying as hard to get the fire energy in the discard with Emor. But I do remember playing people with this. And next up we have one of my favorite cards of all time. And that is Vileplume. Again, if you're playing today's format, this actually looks like an extremely similar card, but I opted to cover this one since there's been more successful decks using this one as opposed to the one from Ancient Origins.
Right.
But Pokebody, Allergy Flower, each player can't play any trainer cards from his or her hand. And before you start screaming about how broken that is, like I said, trainer or item cards back then were just called trainer cards. So blocked all of those. So many decks came out of this card. I already talked about Vilegar, but then we also had things like The Truth, which went on to get second at Worlds. We had Mewbox decks, Chandelure Vileplume, probably my favorite deck of all time.
Yeah.
If I had to say, Excelgor Vileplume, Miss Magius Vileplume. Just there was just so much stuff that played this card. VVV. Forgot about that too.
Yeah, I forgot about VVV.
Yeah,
There we
man.
go.
So yeah, super frustrating card to play against, especially back then because they didn't have Lysander. All we had was Pokemon Catcher at the time as our main form of like bringing up benched attackers or bench Pokemon. So it shut that off, and that was really big because Catcher kind of, I think, helped define the format that it came out in. But yeah, they couldn't play Junk Arm, all sorts of good stuff back in the day.
Right.
So yeah, definitely one of my favorite cards ever. Love this card.
Definitely one of the most frustrating things. I think I started playing around this format with the Heart Gold Soul Silver stuff, and I remember my first Pokemon tournament ever was a city championship, and anytime I saw an Oddish come down, I just I almost lost all hope.
Starts making your palms sweat. You start getting nervous.
Yeah.
You just look at your hand. And you're like, oh god, this is about to be horrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, super good card. Next up, we have Electrode Prime, which this one kind of only saw play right at the end of its lifespan, but luckily it did get to see a little bit of play. It was pretty much only popular for the cities format of 2011 and to 12.
Yeah.
But yeah, Energy Might. Once during your turn before you attack, you can use the power. If you do, Electrode is knocked out, but you get to look at the top 7 cards of your deck, and you get to attach as many energies there as you want to your Pokemon in any way that you like. So at the time, there were a lot of evolution decks, if I remember right. And so this type of thing isn't good in like an evolution deck, just because you have so many different moving pieces like Rare Candy and all of the different pieces of evolution lines.
Yeah.
But after Black and White came out, after the first couple of Black and White sets, we saw a move to much bigger basic attackers and less evolution based attackers. Specifically in Noble Victories when Cobalion and Kyurem came out.
Yeah.
Those were kind of like the main attackers that got paired with Electrode. There's also some variations, like some people dropped Cobalion in favor of Landorus from Noble Victories. I forget why. It might have been to knock out Zekroms for weakness,
Right.
if I remember right. I could be mistaken. It's been a while, but yeah. So Electro was mainly used for Cobalion, Kyurem, Landorus, and even some people I think tried playing this with EXs when they first came out, but it mainly just saw success in that one cities format, but it kind of came out of nowhere and took a lot of people by surprise. And here we have the first of the Black and White cards, and I will say this: I've never seen a card affect a format the way that Mewtwo EX did.
Oh man.
Like, it was insane. I remember trying to get Mewtwo.
Just trying to get more than one of them.
Like, legitimately, if you didn't have Mewtwo and you weren't playing Durant, well, even Durant decks, I think, kind of struggled against Mewtwo. But if you didn't have Mewtwo when this card came out, you weren't going to be in the top at a tournament.
Yeah.
Like, you just weren't. This card just completely destroyed the format. Not in a good way either, in my opinion. Because right before Next Destinies came out, there was probably 5 or 6 viable decks at the time.
Yeah.
But as soon as this came out, it reduced them to maybe 2, maybe 3.
It was, you basically went to a tournament and you were trying to decide, am I playing Mewtwo Eels or am I playing Darkrai with Dark Patch stuff?
Well, Darkrai wasn't even out yet.
Oh, Darkrai came out in... Oh, no, that was the next set, yeah.
But it was CMT. That was the big
Right,
deck.
yeah, I remember CMT.
So you're
Yeah,
playing
with
like
Celebi.
CMT, Eels with Mewtwo, or you were losing.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And
Yeah.
but yeah, so we haven't even talked about why this card is good. But X-Ball, for just a DCE, does 20 damage times the amount of energy attached to both active Pokemon. So at first glance, it doesn't seem like a whole lot, but when you really start doing all the math, you can get a lot of damage really quickly. The other two big attackers in the format right before this came out were probably Zekrom and Reshiram, which had 130 hit points. And so Mewtwo could potentially knock them out since their attacks required 3 energy. And it was just a super aggressive card because this is also in a format where plus power, the same plus power could be played multiple times thanks to Junk Arm. So you could attach for a turn with a DCE and usually accelerate 1 or 2 other energy with Celebi or Electric. So that's 20, 40, 60, maybe 80. Then plus any energy your opponent has attached to them. And then you have things like plus power, like I said, to further modify the damage. And it basically created this type of thing, this phenomenon called Mewtwo Wars. And it was such a thing. And basically you were kind of baiting your opponent into attaching more energy than you.
Right.
To be able to just DCE knock out the
Right.
Mewtwo. And you had to be really careful when to play this card down. It was actually kind of skill intensive, to be honest, because you couldn't just like haphazardly place down your Mewtwo and attach energy.
Sling a bunch of energies on him with Dynamotor all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Pokemon captured up and then swung on for a DCE.
So yeah, whenever you play down Mewtwo, you had to be completely committed to winning the Mewtwo war. But yeah, I've never seen a card in the history of the game, as far as long as I've been playing, that has completely shaken up a format the way this one card did.
Yeah, this card with Pokemon Catcher not being a coin flip yet.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Mewtwo, it's good. So, all right. Next up, we have Blastoise. It's another, I think, card that a little close to our hearts.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Deluge, that's its ability. As often as you like during your turn, you can place down a water energy to one of your Pokemon. So, obviously, if you have a lot of water energy in your hand, you can power up things like Keldeo EX that came out in the same set as this Blastoise, or Mewtwo EX, like we just talked about, or Black Kyurem EX. All of these were huge attackers that benefited from having somebody that could accelerate a lot of energy very quickly. Yeah, and Blastoise is probably one of the best decks in format for as long as it was in play.
Yeah.
Trying to think, it didn't really start dying off in popularity until towards the end of its life cycle, to be honest. But it was a pretty popular deck for, and arguably maybe even the best deck in format.
Yeah.
When it first came out.
Yeah, with Black Kyurem, Keldeo, and everything like that. That thing was crazy. And then it died off, and then came back again with whenever Archie's Ace in the Hole came out, and then it won the world championship. So definitely a great card.
Yeah,
One of my favorites for sure.
and next up on our list is going to be kind of an odd one. You're probably thinking, why in the world is an Exeggcute on here? 30 hit points, gross, Seed Bomb, 2 energy to do 20 damage, no thanks.
Yeah.
But it's on here because of its ability. If this Pokemon is in your discard pile, you may put it into your hand. And that seems like kind of gimmicky, but there's so many cool things you can do with this. Like the Blastoise deck we just talked about, some players opted to play one of these in their deck just so that their Ultra Balls, when they played Ultra Ball, they wouldn't have to discard as many precious resources. Or when they played Superior Energy Retrieval, they wouldn't have to discard as many crucial resources. So it's also playing Blastoise a little bit, but it more or less came into popularity, I think, when people started playing Weavile, that let you discard Pokemon from your hand to do damage.
Yeah.
So obviously you would discard Exeggcutes, get them back into your hand, and keep attacking every turn like that. But in more recent memory, it really saw a lot of success in decks like Flareon and even decks like Vespiquen and Expanded,
Right.
because these are Pokemon whose damage is based on how many Pokemon you have in your discard pile. So Execute's a natural one to want in there because not only does it beef up your attacks, but in addition to that, you can use it to fulfill costs of things like Ultra Ball, Computer Search, etc., etc.
And to control your hand to help you get the Maxies or Archie's Ace in the Hole and whatnot.
Yeah, because Flareon also played Empoleon for a while once Archie's came into the format.
Yeah.
So Exeggcute really helps you manipulate your hand size to where you're able to play Archie's Ace in the Hole.
And that was another cool thing, was being able to take this out of your discard and then discard it again with Empoleon's ability to just keep drawing cards almost for free. Yep. So that was cool. And then another one I wanted to touch on was whenever Exeggutor became a deck for a little bit, blocking their supporters instead of item locking. You could just battle compressor 3 of these and then just put them on your board. So it was even better than something like Level Ball whenever you played that deck.
So yeah, definitely a really interesting mechanic. I'm really bummed Exeggcute is out of the standard format right now. I really liked it though. I thought it was cool. And next up from the same set, Plasma Freeze, we have the Flareon we were just talking about. It is a Team Plasma card, and we're looking at it for its attack Vengeance for a double colorless energy. Does 10 more damage for each Pokemon in your discard pile.
Definitely good. Definitely winning lots of events, topping lots of events. I think this past winter regionals. We haven't seen Florida yet, or this last week, I guess, of regionals. But I'm pretty positive Vespiquen Flareon has been in the top 4, I guess. At least top 8 of each of those tournaments. So definitely a great card.
What's interesting, I don't remember this card being played when it first came out.
Yeah. It seemed... I had a friend who tried to play this a lot, and then I don't know. It seemed kind of tough to me to play this card because we didn't have things like Battle Compressor yet. Once Battle Compressor came out, it just became that much better.
Yeah. So it's kind of crazy. The card went from being nothing, and it was probably like a 10-cent card.
Yeah.
And I think like at its peak, it went up to like what like somewhere in the $5 to $10 range, if I remember right. It was like it went for a stupid amount of money
I think
for just being an uncommon.
I think currently I checked Amazon recently and it was like $4 for one of these. So
That's crazy.
yeah.
So yeah, super good card, and just goes to show you, hang on to your cards. Just because something's not playable when it first comes out doesn't mean that it won't be in the future too. So, and also another card from Plasma Freeze, we have Mr. Mime. Um, Again, attack's not too relevant. We're looking at the ability prevent all damage done to your bench Pokemon by attacks. So that kind of seems okay.
Yeah.
But you have to remember the format that this came out in. Darkrai won pretty much every Worlds that it was in Standard, aside from the very last one that it was legal for. So Darkrai was one of, ever since it came out, one of the biggest attackers in the game. And
Right.
Darkrai, part of his attack sniped 30 damage on the bench. And also Landorus EX came out a couple of sets before this, which also sniped 30 onto the bench. So there was a lot of cards at the time that were doing bench damage. Even Genesect EX, which came out, I
Yeah.
believe, in the set after this, again, sniping the bench. So, oh, Raikou EX, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Forgot about
Raikou. I can't believe I forgot about Raikou EX. I loved that guy.
But yeah, yeah. So it was definitely a good answer to maybe some of these low HP, um, maybe like stage one type of decks, or even stage two decks, really, that had to evolve in order to get set up.
Yeah.
Because these types of attacks, like Night Spear and Hammerhead from Darkrai and Landorus, would just kind of pick you off before you got set up sometimes. So Mr. Mime is a really great answer to those types of decks if you typically have problems with them. Okay. Raichu, yeah. This is our first card from the XY block. Yeah, and Raichu's like, as of right now, still popular too.
Yeah.
So 90 hit points, free retreat. Thunderbolt does 100 damage, man. That's super good.
Yeah, yeah. You're doing 100. I mean, you got to discard all your energy, but
Yeah, but 100 damage though. Yeah, we're definitely being sarcastic.
Yeah.
I've probably never Thunderbolt ever in the history of using this card.
I don't think I ever will either.
But we're looking at Circle Circuit. 20 damage times the number of bench Pokemon, just for a DCE. So when this card came out, I think some players were hesitant about using it, but when it came out, Yveltal EX was super popular. It was kind of like the big hyped card from XY. And so you saw some people run like a 1/1 or 2/2 Raichu in their decks at the time to help deal with Yveltal. Because Yveltal is basically just a stronger version of Mewtwo.
Right.
So you heard how good Mewtwo was just a second ago. So you can imagine a better version of that. And Raichu knocked it out just for a DCE, and as long as you had like a full bench.
Yeah. And now with Skyfield, this thing is seeing a ton of play. And with a few different variants too, mostly with bats. But Raichu bats with Milotic, Raichu bats with Bronzong. Whenever the new Flareon with the ability that made your stage 1 a fire type, I played that instantly. I was like, whoa, Raichu on PTCGO with this Flareon. It was great. I had a good time with that. But yeah, Circle Circuit's definitely a super, super powerful attack. And I remember whenever Skyfield and Ninetails and stuff came out, there's like a ton of hype for a little bit. And I don't even think it saw like a ton of tournament play. But everyone was going nuts over like Skyfield, Ninetails. I don't remember its ability, but it locks the stadium. And
Ninetales,
then
yeah.
yeah, and then doing 180 damage, turn 2 or something like that.
Yeah, so yeah, Raichu's super good. It just actually got a reprint in the newest Pokemon Generation set, so yeah, so this time we'll at least have Raichu around for a few more years too.
Yeah.
And for the last card, of this video, again, it's going to seem kind of weird. It's Golbat. And disclaimer, the only reason he is on here is because Crobat isn't in the original
Yeah.
151. So I felt like Golbat was at least worth giving a shout out to, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Golbat, this is, I mean, all of the bats have seen a ton of play. Further ability, whenever you evolve into Golbat, you can put 2 damage counters onto one of your opponent's Pokemon. So, really good. Saw a lot of play Landorus EX, yours truly even. Piloted that to a 4th place states finish. But yeah, so the idea with at least the Landorus deck was you're playing bats, Muscle Band, Fighting Stadium, Strong Energy, all these different ways to add damage multipliers and hopefully get 1-hit knockouts, or at the very least 2-hit knockouts.
Yeah.
But we've seen bats and other things, like Marcus just said. It's been in Raichu.
Lucario bats.
Yeah.
Um,
Wobbuffet bats.
yeah, Wobbuffet bats. I don't know why that wasn't the first one I said.
Seismitoad bats.
Right.
To put in perspective, there was an old Jolteon EX I almost put on this list that had a similar ability, but it only put 1 damage counter.
Right.
And that was an EX. So, I mean, and that card was in several Worlds decks. So Golbat, being a non-EX, just put 2 damage counters, and then Golbat or Crobat, which we won't talk about too much, but has a similar ability.
Yeah.
As well. So it's just super good. Way to add extra damage. Like I said, in Raichu, it fills up another bench space to do more damage.
Yeah.
Just a really good card. And
Swoop across for 3 prizes against Night March is definitely fun too.
yeah, if you can pull that off.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
So, but yeah, guys, that's it. That's our 20 favorite first generation competitive Pokemon cards. Like I said back in the intro, let us know in the comments what cards you think should have been on this list if we missed any. I know there's been, countless sets at this point.
Yeah.
Actually, probably not true. You can count them, but
Yeah.
it's a lot. It's a lot. There's a lot of sets at this point, and so it's hard to fit everything on the 20. But yeah, guys. So that's it. Feel free to like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys for the next one. Okay.